And welcome back to the program, Kim Baer. Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we were just celebrating some wonderful Iowans. We want to celebrate you this morning and the great work that you do for our community on a regular basis with your incredible staff. But sometimes things happen in life and we need an expert to go to in those situations. Yes. So what are we talking about today, and where's some great advice you can give us?
Well, so I thought we'd talk maybe a little bit more about divorce today.
Okay.
And specifically, I thought we'd talk about property division, because you know, if you can work out it, if either maybe you don't have kids, so that's not going to be an issue, or you do have children and you're able to really agree on how you're going to handle custody, then one of the hardest things for people to kind of grapple with is how are we going to divide up our stuff.
Right.
And so with regard to personal property, and by personal property I mean you know, jewelry, bicycles, furniture, you know, those types of things, we really do encourage people just to kind of figure that out themselves, because otherwise you got to pay a lawyer to figure it out. And
so
that gets
make a list, basically.
Yeah, make a list. Yes.
Now, when you say property to me, and this might be a whole nother segment, since we live in the state of Iowa, most people own land as part of that property. Is that something completely different, or does this fall underneath?
So yeah, so when we say property, so we have personal property and we have real property. And so when we're dividing up, so with regard to personal property, a couple of tips that I typically give people when they come in to talk to us is I'll say, you can go room to room with your spouse and say, okay, you know, you're going to pick and then I'm going to pick and then you're going to pick and I'm going to pick. So we can do that. Another way to do it is to sit down and make a list and kind of have an agreed upon, here's what we think this is worth and this is worth. And so you make a list of all of the big things and then you take turns picking.
Then you try to split it.
Then you try to split it. Yeah. So, you know, and one tip that we give is we say, okay, now remember, gifts really are not marital property. So for instance, if I bought you some golf, if we were married and I bought you some golf clubs and they're expensive, that's not going to go on the list. That was a gift from me to you, and that is yours.
Okay, so that must also apply for what you have on your finger too.
Exactly. That's the next thing that sometimes people get their undies in a bunch about, and that is the ring. And I try to explain to my male clients, my female clients, I'm like, you know, if you ask somebody to marry you and you give them a ring and then they marry you, the ring is theirs. They fulfilled the commitment. It does, I mean, granted, now you're getting divorced, so maybe they didn't completely, you know, fulfill it till, you know, death do us part. But it is their ring. And sometimes we get a little emotional because sometimes the diamond has significance. Maybe it was a family diamond.
Could be your mom's or whatever. Right.
So if for instance, if this ring, this diamond came from your family, if the two of us can agree, you know, and I can say, okay, Lou, you know what, I'm not going to be wearing the ring anymore, you can have the diamond back. Now, if we agree to that, that's fine. But if I really like my ring and I say, Lou, I'm sorry, I'm keeping the ring, under the law, I get to keep the ring. So
is that a prenup?
That's not even a prenup. That is, it just falls under, it's the law.
Really?
It was a gift. It was a gift.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, it was
I guess be careful what you're gifted one
another. You might have a replacement idea coming up. I'll take the stone, I'll put another one in there.
I'm going to let you borrow this or something. But what is law? Are we just being amicable by saying let's go to room and decide, or what is Iowa law when it comes to that situation?
Well, and that's an excellent question. So really in Iowa, it's called equitable division. And so what that typically means is 50-50. Not always, but that's kind of what the court's trying to get to.
Right.
So with regard to personal property, go room to room. But let's talk about the house, kind of your question about the land, and about retirement accounts. So so it can get difficult. So a lot of times one person wants to keep the house. And so if one person wants to keep the house, and I'm just going to use an example. Let's say that you and I own a house and there's $50,000 equity in the home. So arguably you're entitled to $25,000. And maybe I want to keep the house, but you have a 401k that's worth a lot more than mine. And when I say worth a lot more than mine, we're looking again at the marital portion. So what was earned during the marriage. And so maybe we can trade apples for oranges. Maybe I'll say to you, hey Lou, I'm going to keep all of the house. I'm not going to pay you your $25,000, but you keep more money than in your 401k. So we can trade apples for oranges, and so
swap them out. Now,
you can swap them out.
What if one of the two spouses was the primary or paid for the home by themselves, and the house? No. You're shaking your head. No?
Okay, let me bounce off of that one really quickly.
Right.
Okay, let's say you're the main person and it's under your name mostly type situation, and divorce has happened. Years later, you've sold the house. Do you then have to give half of what you've made off that house to your ex?
Well, it depends on what your divorce decree says. So if it just awards the house to you, then it's yours. Sometimes what we'll say, because maybe mom or dad wants to stay in the house with the kids, and the other spouse is saying, okay, I agree, you stay in the house with the kids, you can stay there for 5 years, but then when you sell it in 5 years, I get X amount.
Okay.
So we can work those
all
types
things that can be worked out.
Yeah, they can be negotiated. One tip I wanted to make, well, let me go back to your question when I was shaking my head. So first of all, it does not matter whose name anything is in. It just doesn't.
It doesn't?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Really?
Well, think about it, because otherwise, if I was sneaky, maybe I'm thinking, okay, I love Lou a lot, but I'm not quite sure that this marriage is going to last, so I'm going to make sure the house is in my name, and make sure the RV is in my name.
But what if you acquired it before you were married?
Okay,
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a different question. So if you acquired it before you got married, then what we do?
Like you were together but not married.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
So let's just give an example.
Sorry, just looking out for you.
Okay. Good question.
Can you tell who's been together with somebody and not married? All right. So anyway, to answer your question, let's say that you and I get married, and you had the house first before we got married, and it's got $50,000 equity when we get married.
Got it.
Arguably, that $50,000 is yours. So what we look at is the value of the house on the day we got married, and the value of the house when we get divorced. And so how much equity was accumulated during that time. And the court does not care. Maybe I'm a stay-at-home mom. The court does not care that you made all the payments during the marriage.
Right.
Because everything we make during a marriage is marital property.
Okay.
So now you have to remember, because we're in family law, there's nothing that is black and white, really. So it may be that a court says, all right, Lou, I understand that you had $50,000 equity in it, but you also during the marriage, maybe you took out a line of credit and you guys used that money to paint the house or put the siding on it, and that got paid down. Or maybe you've spent a lot of my money, during the marriage, my premarital money. So a judge does have the authority to ignore the premarital and kind of move some things around. So I always tell people that in general, what you had coming into the marriage is considered to be yours. But you need to know that unless you have a prenuptial agreement, it's going to depend on what the judge thinks is fair. Okay. So if you really want to protect it, you should get a prenuptial agreement, just so that everybody's clear, because then we have a contract that the judge can enforce.
So the prenup could say, my stuff is mine, your stuff is yours.
Exactly. And usually we make a list. Wow. So going back to the home equity and the 401k, the one point I want to make sure people walk away with today is you have to remember that home equity is not going to be taxable. So in other words, if I go refinance the house, going back to my example where I owe you arguably 25 of the 50, if I refinance the house and I pull 25 out to pay you, you're not going to pay taxes on that 25,000 because it's a property settlement.
Okay.
But if you take out 25,000 of your 401k, then that's taxable.
Big
so
time.
So we want to make sure. So if I'm saying to you, hey Lou, I got this great deal for you, I'm going to keep the house, I'm going to keep all 50, so I'm going to keep your 25, and you keep 25 of your 401k you would owe me. Your answer should be, well, not so fast, because it should be 25, because 25 really is, when you take it out, it's pre-tax money, so you're going to get taxed at whatever your tax rate is.
Yep.
So maybe you should be able to keep 35 or 40. I mean, we'd have to kind of do the math
figure it out,
to make it fair.
So when it comes out, it's 25.
So exactly. Okay. That's exactly right.
Okay.
So unless it's a Roth, see, there's always, okay. So remember, if it's a Roth 401k,
you already paid the taxes.
The taxes. So $1 in the Roth is worth $1. $1 in the 401k is probably worth about 75 cents.
Okay.
So these are all things that you want to sit down with your attorney, go over, try and kind of figure out, because we can wheel and deal, but we just want to make sure it's fair.
I'm glad you can keep everything straight. Yeah.
As I say, that's why you need an expert to keep it all straight. It's an unfortunate situation, but you want to make sure you're doing it the right way. So if people want to sit down and have that conversation with you, Kim, how can they do so?
Yeah, just give us a call. We offer a free 30-minute consultation. Come on in. We'll talk about the process. We'll give you some tips and kind of figure out what might make sense.
Okay, all very, very important things to keep in mind.
Yes.
But I think one of the things that I took away from here, too, if you're not married, prenup may not be a bad idea.
Exactly. They're not that expensive, and they protect both parties.
All right.
So, yeah.
All right, there you go.
All right, 7:39, and we will be right back. There's Kim's info. I want to get a hold of her. Get a hold of her via phone, or just stop by her office right across from the Vets, and plenty of free parking right next to your building.
Yeah, exactly. Easy to get to.
All right.